Welcome to Marfa Mondays with your host, award-winning travel writer and novelist, C.M. Mayo.
A very warm welcome to you on this very first in a series of 24 podcasts. The podcast will be out on the third Monday of the month, every month, beginning today, Monday, January 16th, 2012, through the end of 2013. I'm your host, C.M. Mayo, and I'm not in Marfa today, but in Mexico City. In this first podcast, I'd like to introduce myself and the whys and wherefores of this project, which I have to tell you, I'm so excited about. I grew up in California, and to make a long story short, I've been living in Mexico City on and off for over 20 years. But I was born in far west Texas, so in a way, for me, this project is a coming home. Marfa is a small town of about 2,000 residents out in the more or less middle of West Texas. It's on the high plateau, and I do mean high, almost 5,000 feet above sea level, in the Chihuahuan Desert. If you wanted to drive out to Marfa from El Paso, you'd head east and a bit south for about 3 hours. From San Antonio, you'd drive west and a bit north for about 6 hours. You're farther from Chicago, 24 hours driving distance, than you are to Mexico City, 20 hours. But from Marfa to the Mexican border at Presidio Ojinaga, it's only about 1 hour. Now I'm going to be podcasting about much more than the town of Marfa. I'm going to be looking at Marfa and environs. So that includes Fort Davis, Alpine, Marathon, Valentine, Presidio, some of the ranches and the rivers, hot springs, and the various mountain ranges, and the whole region of the Big Bend. Ever since I first heard about it, I yearned to go there. About a decade ago, on a brief visit, I drank in the majesty of the vast spaces, the bluer than blue skies, and at night, stars beyond stars. And yes, they are real, the Marfa lights. But the people, breezing through, I didn't have a chance to talk to many, for I was deep into writing another book, Miraculous Air, about Baja California, Mexico's nearly 1,000-mile-long peninsula. Once that wrapped up, Miraculous Air came out in 2002. I wanted to come back to explore Marfa and environs, but first, what I imagined would be a lickety-split project, researching and writing a novel based on the strange but true story of, as the title says, the last prince of the Mexican Empire. It seems a pattern with me that writing a book always takes about 7.5 times longer than I'd planned. But never mind. Finally, I am returning. No, not to live. I'm based in Mexico City, as I said, but over the next 2 years, with a series of journeys, interviews, reading, and other research, I'm writing a book. At this point, it wouldn't be wise to say much more, for if I've learned one thing, it is that any journey, and that includes the journey of writing a book, is strewn with surprises. But a few preliminary things I can say are that I'm especially interested in exploring the contrasts and comparisons with the subject of my previous travel memoir, Miraculous Air, about Mexico's Baja California Peninsula. I'd like to look at the history, geography, flora, and fauna, and the way the Spanish and indigenous peoples and the Mexicans and Americans have clashed at times and come together at other times. I'm also especially interested in exploring the area's iconic status in the American imagination, how the vast spaces and the quality of the light have inspired and continue to inspire various artists, and the way so many of us all over the world are connected now on the internet, and how this fundamentally changes a travel writer's approach to a place and interaction with the people there. I imagine that some, or perhaps many people in Marfa at some point may find these podcasts and my webpage via a Google search or, say, a hashtag on Twitter. So the writer's relative anonymity as he or she travels has evaporated. Similarly, these days, far more of a writer's research before, during, and after traveling is online. And with Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, TripAdvisor, YouTube, web pages of all kinds, we are experiencing a hyper-accelerating social transparency, or the sometimes misleading appearance of transparency. I find this very interesting. So why the podcasts? And by the way, what is a podcast? You're listening to one. It's just an online audio file. So think of a podcast as a radio show, but one you can listen to when you want, now, in 5 minutes, or 5 years. In the past, as I did while writing my travel memoir, Miraculous Air, I would have turned out a series of travel articles for newspapers and magazines. Well, never say never. I may still write an article or 3, but I'm less interested in which is the cheapest or the best or the coolest bed and breakfast, etc., than I am in talking to people. And now that podcasting is possible, rather than stash my notes and taped interviews in the drawer, I can share them. Who are some of the people who live in this remote and magnificent place? How is this part of West Texas unique or similar to other places? How are things changing? What is it that outsiders inevitably miss? What are those Marfa lights? As always, I'm especially interested in hearing from artists, for they make a razor-sharp habit of seeing what others do not. But anyone can surprise. I learned that much in writing Miraculous Air when I interviewed, among so many others, a sport fishing mogul whose family crest included a cornstalk, and a goat herder who wore handmade shoes, but who, even from the deepest canyons of the Sierra de San Francisco, could identify the flight numbers of the airplanes that passed overhead. As I question as wide a variety of people as I can muster, I will depart from a simple premise. An interview, like a travel memoir, is a quest for understanding, not just about a certain place and time, but in the deepest sense of what it means to be human. With this series of 24 podcasts, I invite you to join me in this adventure in listening. When you come to my webpage, cmayo.com/Marfa, you'll see a lot more about the podcasts, about the project, about me, about the book. There are videos. There's a blog. You can click to receive a free newsletter, and you can click to follow me on Twitter at Marfa Mondays. One of the really fun things on this webpage is a whole sub-web page about Marfa and environs. And I'm constantly updating it. But right now, in January 2012, when I'm just getting started, I've got some really fun things on there already. In addition to my own podcasts, I offer some links to podcasts by others. So you'll find the link there for 50 Years of Movie Magic in Marfa, Texas by John Bennett, which is at the National Public Radio website. There are some other National Public Radio shows that covered Marfa, and you'll find links to those as well. There's also a section of links about some of the many films that have been made in Marfa and the Marfa area, including Giant, starring James Dean, Rock Hudson, and Elizabeth Taylor. One of my favorite videos that I found on the web is called Now Entering Marfa, Texas, which is a little promotional piece for Etsy.com. Again, you'll find the link to that on my page. There's also a series shot and edited by journalist Melina Kolb for News 21 at the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. And those are really fun. I really enjoyed watching those. They're mostly about the younger people and some of the artists and interns at the Judd Foundation who've been living in Marfa. Some of my favorite videos that I found on YouTube about Marfa or made in Marfa are the Food Shark commercials. I highly recommend those, and you will find links to those also on my page. I also offer some links, and I'm sure this section is going to grow quite a bit as I go, on art and artists in Marfa and environs. And some of the few that are on there now are the Judd Foundation, the Chinati Foundation, the Ein Foundation, Arbor & Sons Editions, Ballroom Marfa, Baxter Gallery, Marfa Studio of Arts, Marcia Hughes Studio, Dumitrescu Gallery, Lannan Foundation Residency Program, and I'm sure there are many more that will be added soon. And one of the forms of art that really fascinates me as a poet is cowboy poetry. It's something I'm really not familiar with, but I see that there is an annual gathering in Alpine, Texas. So I'm sure there'll be a lot to podcast about that. Marfa and environs is also a big music scene, music of all kinds. So I'll be adding links about that. My Marfa links also include links to local media. There's the Big Bend Now from the Big Bend Sentinel. There is a lovely, lovely quarterly called the Cenizo Journal. That's Cenizo. I recommend it highly. You can download their issues as a PDF onto your iPad or read it online. Some really fascinating articles that, even though I'm just getting started, I've already found so many of those articles very helpful in preparing my research. And finally, I offer on this page some bibliography, which, again, I'm sure will be growing over the next 2 years, and links to recent newspaper and magazine articles about Marfa. So have a look at that, and you'll start getting an idea of why I find Marfa and environs so fascinating. The next Marfa Mondays podcast will be available on Monday, February 20th, 2012. Meanwhile, good wishes to you, and many thanks for listening.
Tune in for Marfa Mondays with your host, C.M. Mayo, at cmmayo.com/podcasts.
Travel from your armchair. About C.M. Mayo's Miraculous Air, Library Journal says, with elegant prose and an artist's eye for detail, Mayo may just have written one of the best books ever about Baja California. Highly recommended. The Los Angeles Times Book Review calls Miraculous Air a luminous exploration of Baja California, from its southern tip at Cabo San Lucas to its lost city of Tijuana. Mayo takes the fiction writer's impulse and blends it with the instincts of a journalist to create a work of nonfiction that elides into modern myth. Miraculous Air, Journey of 1,000 Miles Through Baja California, the Other Mexico, by C.M. Mayo is available in a paperback edition from Milkweed Editions and now also as an ebook from Dancing Chiva. Look for Miraculous Air in bookstores and from all major online booksellers.
Mexico, a traveler's literary companion. The Los Angeles Times Book Review calls it a book to throw in a suitcase on the way to Mexico or just settling into a favorite patio chair. It will open your eyes and fill you with pleasure. Mexico Connect says, discovering it was like opening a door and walking into a brightly lit room filled with all kinds of literary treasures. Mexico, a traveler's literary companion, 24 Mexican writers on Mexico, selected by award-winning writer and translator C.M. Mayo, is available from Whereabouts Press. Look for it in bookstores and all major online booksellers. Hear a country speak. Find out more about Mexico, a traveler's literary companion, at cmmayo.com.